Manawaker Studios Flash Fiction Podcast is supported by patrons on Patreon. To find out more or to add your support for as little as $1 a month, visit patreon.com/Manawaker. Welcome to Manawaker Studios Flash Fiction Podcast. I'm CB Drogi. This week, Breakfast for One by Mike Murphy. Bleary-eyed and hungover, I devoured 3 strips of bacon before realizing this breakfast was an impossibility. I live alone, and I hadn't cooked it. Maria? It could have been my girlfriend's doing, but her car wasn't in the driveway. Besides, the door was locked, the inside chain pulled across it. I took a few steps to the stove. Still warm. Some pots and pans were in the sink, including a skillet holding a small amount of slightly spitting grease. I opened the fridge. Everything on the table had been growing old in there. I was going to make myself a nice breakfast one day, but not being a morning person, I usually reached for the Cheerios. Still confused about who did the cooking, I sat down and continued eating. No sense in letting good food go to waste. My call to Maria turned into a lecture about how I acted at Nick's party last night. I could tell from her voice that the surprise I had found in my kitchen wasn't on her to-do list, and wouldn't be for a while. The next morning, I smelled bacon again. I jumped out of bed, but the kitchen was empty. The table was set, and the used pots and pans, still warm, were in the sink. How whoever did this managed to get away so quickly? I was up early the next morning, hiding behind the hutch in the dining room. I must have dropped off, but the sound of something sizzling woke me. I leapt into the kitchen to see me. He was standing before the stove, crackling skillet in one hand. He was wearing the same blue robe I had on, but his was dirty and tattered. My visitor slowly turned. His hair was salt and pepper, his face was dirty, and there were some deep, oozing wounds on one cheek. Threads of fabric hung from the left sleeve of his robe and fluttered in the breeze coming through the window. "Rise and shine, sleepyhead," he said, in my voice though a bit raspy. Limping, he carefully cleaned up, placing the bacon on a plate before me. "Sit down," he continued. "We need to talk." I eased onto the kitchen chair, as far from my visitor as possible. "Bacon no good?" he asked after a moment, noticing I hadn't so much as touched it. "Who? You?" "Uh-huh. Think you're sleeping?" Yeah, that's it." "What color's my robe?" "Blue." "Do you dream in color?" "Of course not. No one does," I responded, realizing the problem before the words were out of my mouth. I looked at his face. His hair was splotchy. Both of his eyebrows were gone. Rough new skin was growing over the remnants of his right eye. "What happened to you?" I asked him. "Fire," he explained. "That stove. You just used it. It's fine. Now, I'm not from now. You're not. This'll sound corny, but I'm from your future," he continued, noticing my skepticism. "Accept it, will you? It's complicated and time is short." "When did this happen?" "I'm not going to tell you." "What?" "I know how we procrastinate," he answered. "How you do and I did. If I tell you when the fire was, you'll stall and not get that damn thing fixed until it's too late." "Well, you have a point," I admitted. "Tell the landlord there's a problem with the stove. He wants his rental property in one piece, and Maria wants you in one piece." "Maria?" I asked anxiously. "Is she—" "Relax," my visitor replied. "She wasn't here when I died, but boy did she cry at the funeral." He stood and leaned over the table, putting his burnt face next to mine. I could smell the soot and decayed flesh. "Call him today," he insisted. "I will," I assured him, trying not to look at my late future self's injuries. "I'd hate to think," he went on, straightening up, "that I went through all this to warn you for nothing. You don't want to end up like me." "If the stove's defective," I asked, "why'd you just use it?" "'Cause I'm sure it's still safe. And no, I won't say for how much longer." He sat down, leaning his elbows on the table. "I had forgotten what a sound sleeper I was, what it would take to wake you up. I figured if anything could get you out of bed, it was food. You took so long getting here the first 2 mornings, I had to leave. Only allowed so much time, and that was tough to get." He pushed the plate of bacon closer to me. "Eat," he said. I did. "Look on the bright side," my visitor went on. "Bright side?" I asked eagerly. He popped some bacon into his broken-toothed mouth, savoring it. Eventually, he said, fading to nothing, you do become a pretty good cook.
This has been Breakfast for One, written by Mike Murphy. For more information about Manawaker Studios' other projects, including books and games, visit manawaker.com, which is also where you should go to learn more about the authors featured on this podcast or to get details about submitting a story. The Flash Fiction Podcast theme song is by Kevin MacLeod. Manawaker Studios' director of DICE is Ben Baston. I'm CB Droege. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at CBDROEGE. Thanks for listening.